Hey everyone, my name is DJ Milez, and welcome to Season 6 Game of Thrones recap. Again, this is not only regarded as one of the best seasons of Game of Thrones. I was reminded today, after watching this whole season this past week, that this season right now, I'm going to say, is my favorite season of Game of Thrones. And before we start deep diving, I want to go ahead and introduce my co-pilot here with me. Christian, how are you doing today?
I'm well, man. Bold words. Season 6 better than any of the first 4. You're going to have to defend that. You know that, right?
Now, let's go ahead and talk about episode 1. We pretty much find out here that, well, Marcella is dead after the events of season 5. And then, of course, that Maggie the Frog prediction is slowly unraveling to Cersei, and she's kind of freaking out about all that. You know, when she ends up talking to Jaime, she's just like, hey, this Maggie the Frog lady way back when told this thing, and I'm kind of freaking out. And Jaime's like, listen, fuck that lady, right? Like, what she's saying doesn't make sense. Don't worry about it. And then, of course, we jump into Arya after her failing to kill the person she had to and ended up killing Maren Trant. She's now starting this season as a blind beggar, and, you know, she has it pretty hard over here. Of course, you know, Davos discovers Jon Snow's body at the end of season 5 and all that stuff, and, you know, him and a few of the loyal men of the Night's Watch are there to protect him. And then, of course, we see Ellaria end up killing Prince Doran and, you know, one of the Sand Snakes killing Tristan and all that stuff. Again, as if it wasn't more insulting for everything that happened in season 5 of Dorne. Just Prince Doran kind of going out the way he did because of Ellaria, I think was just pretty weak. And I'm thinking to myself, was there no one else that ran the line of succession in Dorne? Like, I know, you know, Tristan died and all that, but where's like the councilman, right? Because for Ellaria to do what she did and for her to have no problem with it, I'm like, that's kind of a little weak. But I don't know. How did you feel about that?
I actually kind of like it, believe it or not. Even though Dorne was a waste of a storyline, I do kind of like it because, again, in this world, women are second-class citizens. And these are women saying, fuck that noise. Like, you know, fuck the patriarchy as it will. Yeah. And they kind of take over. But think about it. It's not the first time or the last time that this happens in this season even, right? That's the really amazing thing about it.
Let's go ahead and finish the end of episode 1 here with the Red Woman. Melisandre kind of lost her faith, so to speak, after figuring out, well, Stannis wasn't the true champion here, right? Well, what the fuck am I going to do? Davos is like, listen, I seen you do some crazy fucking shit, okay? That vagina, you know, demon monster, we're never talking about it again. But I know you can revive some people, so go ahead and do it. You know, and then she plays that Monster Reborn Yu-Gi-Oh card, tries to revive Jon Snow. It's not going to work. I'm not sure what's going to happen. Oh, I think that might be episode 2. But I'm jumping a little ahead of myself, Christian, because we end up finding out here that, holy crap, Melisandre is an old person. But I'm going to say this. Listen, just put on that necklace, and then I can finally say I had sex with the cougar. So, yeah, because I would.
The reason I love that so much is because she has been so sexualized throughout the whole show. You know what I'm saying? Like, Stannis, all he wanted to do was fuck her when she was going to fuck Gendry that one time before she put the leeches on him and shit like that. Like, she's been so sexualized throughout it that I think it's a really liberating moment. Right? Like, not just for her, but for us, where you're looking at her as she is, the way she actually exists.
So now let's jump into episode 2, Home. And season 5, we did not see Bran at all. So now let's just kind of assume whatever the passage of time is. He's been, you know, under the Deku tree learning, you know, all the backstory here, right? Of everything happening with the history of Westeros and all that. And this is, again, one of the reasons why I was deemed season 6 as one of my favorites, because we get a lot of the cool shit that we've been slowly, patiently waiting for, right? We see a lot of flashback with Ned, who Lyanna is, and how important she is as a Stark. But not only that, more about her character later on this season, and we just really see these cool flashbacks of them being young and just kind of like the early beginnings of everything happening that led to the events that we have come to known in Game of Thrones. Later on in the episode, well, Tyrion tries to tame dragons, and although that is one of the dumbest things he's probably done up to date.
This season, you start to kind of feel plot armor. You're like, well, Tyrion's too important, so obviously he's not going to get killed by these dragons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of the small issues with it. But I still liked it a bunch because the dragons are like deeming him worthy. You know what I mean? And we, the audience, like he's probably my favorite character in the show. We're like, fuck, yes.
We see Ramsay finally stab and betray Roose after saying, hey, listen, I got a baby coming along the way, but you're always going to be my first, true born and son and blah, blah, blah. And then he gets the can. And not only that, we see Balon Greyjoy get the can too, next to his brother Euron Greyjoy. I wasn't too crazy about Ramsay killing Roose because although a lot of people will argue with me on this fact, I just, as psychotic as Ramsay was, I felt like he respected Roose a lot for him to not do it. So it kind of threw me a little off guard, and it seemed like it only had to happen to see what ended up happening throughout the season with Battle of the Bastards, so on and so forth. Because I'm like, Roose dying just felt like, well, hey, we need to wrap up the show, so let's just kill him. Melisandre used that Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Reborn card, and Jon Snow is finally revived, So pretty cool stuff there.
Yeah, it was a great scene, man. They played it well, and obviously the ramifications for the rest of the season are very important.
Yeah, definitely. So now let's go ahead and jump into episode 3. That is Oathbreaker. One of the early stuff we have, once Jon is revived, people are like, Davos is like, hey, what'd you see? And he's like, I saw nothing, right? Which I thought just a nice little, homage to the nothing Jon Snow. And, well, fuck, not only that, listen, of all the gods and all the religions out there, one of the profound questions a lot of people have in life is there nothing, or am I going to go to heaven somewhere, right? So the thought of being somewhere after this life, it's a little satisfying. And to know that our hero Jon Snow is like, nah, there's nothing. It's kind of scary. But let's jump again to one of the cool things that we see in season 6, and that is more young flashbacks of Ned Stark kicking ass at the what was this Tower of Joy? I think it was what it was called, right? Where Arthur Dayne, considered one of the greatest swordsmen of all time. This whole scene is just beautiful, right? It's a young Jon Snow, Ned Stark with Howland Reed, right? And it's him and 5 other people from the north, I'm assuming, facing off against Arthur Dayne, and he's just taking these people left and right. And what we end up finding out, Christian, is that Ned Stark, my apologies, is not so honorable as we thought, right? So, because we've heard through the stories that, hey, he defeated one of the greatest swordsmen of all time, arguably, with Arthur Dayne. And, well, he took him out, but not the way that we thought. So how did you feel about that?
Well, I think it's an important scene. It doesn't mean that Ned Stark is some fucking asshole, and that's always who he was, right? I think that the scene immediately after this, the big reveal, if you will, kind of like that's the inciting incident for him to be a super honorable person. But it is disappointing because you're right. Like Bran's observing this in a time loop, like he's able to go back and he's seeing this. So he's learning lessons about his father. It's not like everyone knows, you know what I mean? Like the majority of people are still, out there thinking Ned Stark is the greatest guy who ever walked the earth. Mm-hmm. The only person who's really affected by it is Bran. But yeah, all of the Tower of Joy scenes are amazing, and they're staggered throughout the season. So you get a little bit more information each time. And I don't know if you intended to talk about that some more, but if you don't, I want to really quickly talk about like the actual time loop thing, where there's like a moment where Bran calls out to his dad, and Ned in the past looks, you know what I mean? Like he, for a second, it seems like Bran can affect time altogether, which I think is an important thing to bring up as we head to the final, season, or 2 seasons in this case, because he's got all this power and he's going to have to, be used at some point. So I think this is kind of the beginning of you seeing some of that power.
Let's go ahead and just talk about Dany and see how she's doing. So after the events of season 5, we ended up seeing the Dothraki end up capturing her because Khal Drogo is dead, although she was going to be raped and mutilated by the new Khal. They're like, whoa, you used to be married to Khal Drogo. We're going to send you to this pretty much this house of cow widows, right? Where you can live the rest of your life just hanging out over here, right? And dying. So we see stuff of that happening over there with Dany. And then, of course, we end up finding out that the masters of Yunkai and Astapor and all these people pretty much were the ones in charge of the Sons of the Harpies and this whole formulated attack. We see Arya here grabbing a stick. She's seen a lot of Star Wars episodes, so she's learning to become a blind Jedi. So good for her. And then, of course, we see the episode end with Jon Snow hanging the traitors from the end of season 5, and of course, at the end, awards Ed the new not trademark here, but the new name to become the Lord Commander, because he's like, I did my duty, I'm fucking done. Now we jump into episode 4, Book of the Strangers. He's reunited with Sansa, and finally we see some Stark reunion. I remember watching this the first time getting a little teary-eyed. I'm like, this is very emotional for both of them, because fuck, they went through a lot of shit together in up to that point. So it was really great to see them unite. And then of course Sansa's like, hey, let's go ahead and figure out our plan of attack here, because we got to retake the north. But now let's go ahead and jump into King's Landing. Man, Marjorie and the Tyrells are not doing so well over here. So of course Marjorie, we end up finding out, hey, she's learning to play the Game of Thrones, and she plays it so well, Christian. That's why it's so depressing to see what happens with her at the end of this season. But she's figuring out, you know what, let me just play the game that the High Sparrow wants of me, and tells Loras, don't give up, because we will get out. And then, of course, we see some more stuff happening here with the Greyjoys, with Yara and Theon saying, hey, now that you're back here, Theon doesn't want to rule the Iron Islands. He wants Yara to do it. And that, again, one of the things we see in season 6 is pretty much this girl power, right? With all these characters that we've known to love up to this point. The episode ends with right, Danny, pretty much burns down the whole school of Hard Knocks here with Dothraki land, and of course everyone ends up worshiping her. Now let's go ahead and talk about the door. There's a lot to say in episode 5 here. One of my favorite moments, again, why I think, to me, this is the best season, is seeing the reenactment of everything happening in Braavos, their perspective of the War of the Five Kings, and just kind of, this whole play happening. And, now Arya has this new target that she has to go after. And, of course, as we see all these things play out, it's really cool to see from her perspective, and then Cersei's perspective from the Lady Crane here, about being more emotional and doing all these things and all that play out. I thought was done wonderfully. Christian, before we jump into the King's Moot, though, did you have anything to say about kind of Arya and the whole plays that we've been seeing in Braavos?
Yeah, I want to say one thing quickly before that. Even though it's Dany walking out of a fire thing, like it's reminiscent of season 1, but beyond that, she already has some army. Now she's got a lot more army, right? All the Dothraki kind of go down, and they pledge fealty to her. So this is one of the check marks. Remember in season 2, with the spice guy whose name is too long that she wouldn't be able to pronounce. He's like, you have no army, you have no ships, and you have no allies. Now she's got one of those. And this whole season is about her finally getting all 3 of those checks. So the Arya thing, the reason I really love that is because, again, she's been on the run. There's no fucking Westeros CNN, all right? She doesn't get fucking updates on her phone. She's largely removed from everything that's happened. And this is her kind of hearing the folklores that have been made out of it. Which again, we history is what a fable agreed upon, I think is the famous quote. Mm-hmm. Like, we have it in our minds that things happened a certain way, but the truth is, the winners wrote that shit. So of course it's going to seem that way, And so I think it's really interesting, just like the perversion of history. And how these stories end up being considered fact instead of stories, you know what I mean? So I loved all of that. I thought that was really good too.
Yeah, and definitely. And now before we jump into the King's Moot, I just wanted to say real quickly, we do see another brand flashback here with finding out with my Zelda references, the Kokiri children pretty much started the whole White Walkers, right? And we ended up learning the truth that the White Walkers were made because, they had to defend themselves from the humans that we know today. So again, I do like that cycle of knowing, hey, the only reason the humans have a huge threat is because they were the threat themselves thousands of years ago with the children of the forest here. So now let's go ahead and jump into the King's Moot, because there's a lot I have to say about the King's Moot. Christian, I remember when this came out, I just used that word gallivanting so much because I just thought it was such a funny way that Euron Greyjoy brought it out in this episode. But more importantly, there's a lot of things happening with this King Moot where, listen, Yara obviously needs to stand up and say, I want to rule the Iron Islands. And then, of course, a lot of people are like, girl, you're a girl, right? Theon comes and say, no, she's my sister, and you know what? I nominate her because she knows what she's doing, and she's kind of pretty much have been running this house, alongside my father before he died. And then now we see the full introduction of Euron Greyjoy, and he comes out and he just tells them, you know what? I killed him, but he just didn't know what he was doing. So I'm going to lead, and, I know my niece and nephew are here, but I should lead because I used to kill I killed my brother Balon, and, I should, I have a lot going on for me. I traveled and all that stuff. And then, of course, Theon tells him, listen, while you were out gallivanting and doing all this stuff, we've actually been here running the Iron Islands pretty well. Where the hell have you been? And, of course, a lot of the idiots over there, after Euron is like, gallivanting? That's a big smart word for all of us. We dumb over here. And of course, everyone proceeds to laughing like, yeah, gallivanting. That's a woman's word. And guess what? Because he has no cock. As much as this is my favorite season, we definitely get some South Park comedy with this King Smoot, as if it wasn't enough with the things I've said already. There's a part where there's a montage basically happening. Euron wins. I don't know how. Because when Yara Theon makes the plea, it seems pretty logical to me that she should run, she should be the new leader, right, from, the Greyjoys and all that stuff. But Euron wins, and as he's getting a baptism, what is dead may never die, right? We see Yara and Theon say, fuck this, man. Let's get the fuck out of here. Yeah, let's get the fuck out of here. Let's get our 200 best ships, and let's go and get the hell on out of here. And as we see that happen, Euron, after the whole baptism, was like, where's my niece and nephew? And then you see all these ships leave. And before I get into the stupid of it all, of Euron saying, let's build 1,000 ships and gather all our best men, where were all the people that left with Theon and Yara during the King's Moot to say Yara should lead this whole fucking thing? Someone explain that to me. Please, someone explain that to me, because that's where a little Game of Thrones...
explain it, if you want me to. I mean, well, I'm just think about King's Landing. Like, anytime something happens, it's not like everyone in Flea Bottom is there, right? So it could just be that these were like the yes men, the cronies, right? The secretaries of states and shit like that, the congressmen. So I think maybe that's what it was, because you're right. If you went to an actual democracy, they're probably going to pick Yara, right? Like, she's been there the longest. Remember, they respected the fuck out of her. She kept making fun of Theon that, like, my men would never desert me, because she was so well respected. So that's why it's a weird kind of step back, man. I thought your bigger issue was just the fact that they, like, somehow got 200 people to man 200 boats, because there's just two of them motherfuckers, right? So how do they get the men to fill it? That's my question.
Yeah. So we had that, and then of course Euron is like, hey, listen, let's go build 1,000 of our ships and all that stuff. And listen, we'll jump into it with season 7, because there's a lot of missteps happening in season 7. But and that's how that whole King's Moot ends, right? So Euron's like, let's grab all our ships and all that stuff, and we'll go catch up to them. So now let's go ahead and jump into the emotional part of the door. We end up finding out the emotional heartbreak and the backstory of Hodor himself. His name was Willis, Christian, and you know what? The only reason that Willis became Hodor is because Bran is fucking up with these timelines here. And we end up finding out that whole hold the door was happening now in the present moment. We also see the eradication of another direwolf, Summer dying, the three-eyed raven finally passing away, but not before he inserts the entire matrix that he had onto Bran. And I do like this moment. I know it wasn't supposed to be a funny moment, but I chuckled at it the second time around when Bran tells the three-eyed raven, am I ready? And he looks at him like, nah, bitch, you're not even close, but we got 5 minutes, so start inserting all this stuff.
Kind of glossed over this, but let's just talk about that hallucination when he sees how the White Walkers came to be, right? He then sees himself or like out there, right in the cold, and the Night King's there, and the Night King touches him, and because he touches him, it like broke whatever spell there was that prevented them from coming in.
Let's go ahead and jump to episode 6, Blood of My Blood. We see more cool things though with flashbacks. We end up finding out who the Mad King was, or now we actually get to see who he was through this flashback. Burn them all, burn them all, burn them all. And let's go ahead and just quickly discuss right over here, Christian, that is burn them all him being the Mad King trying to burn everyone in Westeros, or was the three-eyed raven at the time telling the Mad King to burn the White Walkers? Because that's definitely something a lot of people want to think about. So
yeah, as you know, I pitched that to you, like, I don't know, when this first aired like 2 years ago. And I'm like, I don't think he's crazy. I don't think he wants to kill people. The weird thing about that is if you go back and listen to the description of the Mad King in earlier seasons, he clearly was talking about put it where they sleep, put it in their barns, like talking about the wildfire, right?
Yeah.
So in that regard, it seems like he's pretty crazy.
Next up, we haven't talked about, Sam and Gilly that much, but now they're in Horn Hill, and we see one of the most awkward dinner scenes play out here, and we see the introduction of his father, who is a badass. But not only that, we do remember in previous seasons, in season 5, where Stannis did speak about his father, and he just like, hey, although he was on the opposing side during Robert's Rebellion, this man actually kept his ground firm. Right, and he was pretty much deemed one of the baddest guys in all of Westeros. So I do like how the family scene plays out. I think it went on a little too long, although I enjoyed it because, again, there's just more exciting stuff happening in Season 6. I kind of wanted to see more of that. But I figured, you know what, we need to see some more screen time with Sam anyway because he's on his way to become, a maester at the Citadel. Next up, we do see now Tommen reuniting the crown and the faith together to be the faith militant, right? But not before the Tyrell army showed up and is like, hey, listen, we're here to get, my daughter and my grandson back, right? And Olenna is not about that. So to see that whole scene play out, again, Marjorie's playing the Game of Thrones well, but Tommen is just like this easily used.
Oh, he's manipulation city, man. Yeah, if he talks to anyone for 5 minutes, you can convince him of whatever you want to convince him. He's very gullible, man.
Let's go ahead and talk about something really great. That is episode 7, The Broken Man. Holy shit, Christian. The Hound is alive and he's doing well. The last time we saw him was what? I think at the end of season 4 where, Brienne beat the crap out of him, and it looks like now he seems to be a new man, and he wants to live a simple life, and he's done fighting, and he meets here Ian McShane. I forgot his name on the show, but he's such a great reason that he puts these morals and new beliefs into the Hound, and I love every time, the Hound says something smart-ass to him, he challenges with that, where he's like, why am I alive? And, why am I suffering? And he's like, well, I think you've gone through all your suffering. I think, honestly, you were meant to be brought back now that you're alive to do something bigger and better. And we end up seeing that later on with the Hound reuniting with the Brotherhood of... what are they called? Knights of the
Brotherhood Without Banners.
Brotherhood Without Banners. Thank you. Wow. So seeing the Hound was great, and we see a lot of stuff happening with that throughout the Broken Man. And then we see some more stuff here happening with Jaime. We got to give him some stuff to do. He's going all the way to the Tully territory to win it back from the Freys because House Frey does not know how to run ship. And throughout this episode too, we see Jon and Sansa recruiting people to fight for the North for this Battle of the Bastards stuff happening, and we see the introduction of Lyanna Mormont here. She's only 10 years old, and she has quite the mouth and is a bit of a smartass, but you can see why she leads Bear Island. And we now start seeing cool things here, right? We know the major houses of the Lannisters, Targaryens, and Starks, but it's really cool knowing that, yeah, these are the main houses, but these main houses also have these other supporting houses. And it's cool seeing the Umbers and the Mormonts and all that stuff, and House Glover, so on and so forth. But now let's talk about something stupid where I'm like, this is a little weak here, and that is going to Arya, right? So Arya, now knowing that she pretty much betrayed the House of the Undying or House of Black and White or whatever, she wants to go to Westeros. She has a ship, and Christian, she just slowly nonchalantly viewing the view here when now knowing that she's a target from the waif, and then the waif kind of stabs her 3 times, and the waif thinks she's done her job and defeated Arya, but we know she survived and all that. And how the hell is Arya alive and even moving after getting stabbed like that? Pretty gruesomely.
It just feels so removed from the other stuff, and I feel like she's already become that character by the end of, I guess when she gets her eyes back. I don't know. And it leads us to that final scene that you're about to talk about. I think that's in a later episode, but it's still like none of that really coalesces well with me. Also, if I'm wanted by the mafia, I'm not going to take in the vistas. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm going to be hiding under bridges and shit like a troll, like doing whatever I can to lay out of sight until I can actually make my escape.
We see here Cersei is demanded by trial, not before she shows off Zombie Mountain pulling a Mortal Kombat fatality on one of the, religious fanatics out there. Brienne is telling Blackfish, listen, hey, Sansa needs you, and we need the people in River Run to kind of rally behind, the North and all that stuff. And again, very cool character, but he is very selfish to his cause. He was born in River Run. He wants to die in River Run. He's going to defend his castle. But we see him, slowly get the can kicked to him because he was too stubborn. And I do like, though, although, Edmure Tully is not the brightest bunch, he is the Lord of River Run. And I do like how, although Blackfish might be respected as a general for River Run and just a main important part in Westeros, hey, you're not my lord at the end of the day. It's Edmure, and I'm going to do what he says. Sorry, so...
Well, yeah, Jaime has that scene where he he tries to talk to him, right? And he threatens to throw his child from a catapult or something, something like really fucking horrific. Mm-hmm. And so it's, I don't know, that whole scene just shows Jaime. That's a bad thing, but trust me, that's Jaime being merciful.
The Hound reunites with the Brotherhood without banners and then ends up killing Yellowcloak and these people. And it is cool knowing that although they're a bunch of thieves and, they don't really have anyone to go to, not Thoros of Mir, who's a Beric Dondarrion, ends up saying, yeah, listen, these were our people, but what they did was really fucked up, and I want to kill them. And I do like the Hound in spectacular fashion, where there's a guy pointing an arrow at him, and he's like, put that thing down. You're not going to use it. I know a woman more... I know a woman more threatening than you, and I like how he's just talking about Arya through that passage. I thought that was really great. And then, of course, now let's go ahead and talk about Arya, right? Not really crazy with how any of this was done. It's nice knowing that, listen, Arya was taken in by Lady Crane, and she slept it off, right? The severe wounds for 24 hours, but somehow has the adrenaline to rush and run as fast as she can. When I'm like, everything we've learned in Westeros and up to this point in Game of Thrones, when even the smallest of cuts can damage you, you're pretty much out. So I don't know how Arya had the strength to do what she did, but more importantly, just how ridiculous the waif was running like a fucking Terminator right after her, seeing all of it play out. And we've seen the waif bested Arya throughout this season of being the better fighter. So you're telling me the waif, who's been in this house of black and white through Jack and Hagar and is pretty much one of the top people there, well, probably the only one there, do this stuff. Somehow Arya bested her in the dark.
Right, but presumably the waif also did at some point as part of training, right? Like, because I feel like, they said it was because she killed Meryn Trent, but I also think that that's part of the ritual. I could be completely wrong. Yeah. But it's like the waif is already a better fighter, and I'm pretty sure she already went through this whole thing where she didn't have eyes. So it's just a fucking dumb scene, man.
Now we know Arya ends the episode of saying, hey, I'm Arya Stark, and I'm going back to Westeros. Jack and Hagar does smile, though, and it seemed like he kind of was rooting for Arya all along. Let's go ahead and jump into episode 9. Of course, we know that is the biggest WTF moments within the Game of Thrones catalog here when we see these new seasons of Game of Thrones play out. But before we jump into Battle of the Bastards, we see here Dany finally taking over Slaver's Bay now, defeating all the people who pretty much ran the Sons of the Harpies, the fleets that were attacking Meereen. Dany takes all that, and then, of course, makes a truce and alliance with Yara and Theon, saying, hey, my uncle Euron is coming, and, he wants to put his cock inside of you, and, he wants to later on just kind of kill you so he can kind of run and rule Westeros and all that. So Dany's like, yeah, I'm not about that. And hey, Yara, girl power, but you're not going to rape and you're not going to murder any more people. And I will make the Iron Islands yours. Step right up for Battle of the Bastards, Warden of the North champion fight. We have Jon, you know nothing, Snow challenging Ramsay, feed him to the dogs, Bolton. So, Christian, this is, wow. I mean, we've seen some amazing fights happening in this show. And Battle of the Bastards, man, if this wasn't another reason why season 6 is my favorite season, it was this right here. I mean, there's so many expressions that Jon makes that, you know, his face tells it all. Where he just like, there's that point where he looks up before, you know, Rickon ends up getting the can. And let's go ahead and talk about him for 2 seconds. You know, him like Shaggy Dog. Well, it just seemed like he was just another mindless pawn in this Game of Thrones. And although we cared about a lot of the Starks, it seems like Rickon and Shaggy Dog just really got the back burner of all of it. But he's used as a tool to get Jon to confront Ramsay all the way up there, because right now I think they were at 2.5 thousand men versus the Bolton's 5,000 stronghold army on top of, you know, controlling Winterfell. So to see all that play out, and of course Sansa telling Jon, please, I know Ramsay, do not fall for his traps. And of course, this is why we love and hate Jon. It's like, motherfucker, you
falling for traps.
You had to fall for traps. But again, before we see that whole one shot play out here with Jon, I thought it was just so beautiful, where he just kind of like looks up and he just takes off the sheath, right, of his sword, and then he just like, all right, let's go. And then we just see this gruesome battle happening here. And dude, it's awesome. It's fantastic. I am just shocked and left for words, where, you know, we see the Battle of Blackwater be really something special. It seemed like they really put a lot of budget and time here for these one shots and these close angles, and this real example that Blackwater didn't do, that Battle of the Bastards does better, is just show you how gruesome and frightening just being in the battlefield is.
And I mean, there's a scene specifically that I always think about, which is at some point people start piling on top of Jon Snow. Yeah. And he's gasping for fucking air, and I'm watching it and I'm like I can't breathe either, because this motherfucker can't breathe. Yeah. I mean, in terms of putting you there, like I was going to say this, Hard Home I thought was like, okay, well, they've peaked in terms of big action set pieces. Like they were never going to be able to top that. And they did somehow. That's what's really incredible about this. Like there's no supernatural force to it. There's no like, you know, ice monsters that are involved. It's just people. But yet they, in the same way that Hard Home would like, you know, raise the stakes,
elevate
every
the stakes.
few minutes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every time, dude, they would fucking kill it. Like even with Rickon in the beginning, like run. Like you and I both know how that's going to end, right? Yeah. But every time an arrow landed just to the left of Rickon, we're like, okay, maybe he's gonna make it. And like, of course, our fucking hearts are torn out.
And of course, we see them, the Knights of the Vale coming, saving everyone, and whew, man, what a sigh of relief. I remember even watching it the first time. I'm like, how are they going to get out of this? And then, of course, they bring the battle back to Winterfell, and I think it was very important to end it at Winterfell. Shout out to the Mormont sigil here. I think that's a really cool house sigil, by the way. So Jon now finally confronts Ramsay. He takes him one-on-one, and Ramsay's like, okay, well, let's do it your way. And Jon beats him up, and when he's about to beat him up, he looks at Sansa, and he's like, you know what? This is not my battle. This is Sansa. And of course, we see Ramsay go out talking to Sansa, and, you know, the hounds, his hounds that he knows and loves so much, ends up taking him out. And I thought that was beautiful poetic justice to see Ramsay go out. We jump into the last episode, The Winds of Winter. Just this first 18 minutes of this show with, you know, Cersei and the Tyrells, you know, were called upon to be in this trial. And you hear that Light of the Seven track play in the background. And this is just, if there's a way I can describe it, it's 2 words, and it's hauntingly beautiful. This, hearing the song play out on top of the scenes unravel, right? Loras now gives up his name, and, Mace Tyrell is not about it. Marjorie ends up telling the High Sparrow, listen, have you thought about for 2 seconds why Tommen is not here, why Cersei isn't here? There's a reason why they're not here. And she finally drops the whole religious act to say, we need to get out. We got to get out right now. Of course, when we see everything happening, it's beautiful, dude. The explosion of the sept done, and just Cersei smiling. Not only did she get rid of the High Sparrow, she got rid of everyone in her way, right? And we can talk about it later on at the very end of the episode when she's announced the queen of all of Westeros. But everything done here was just shocking, and I did not expect to see one of my favorite characters, my future girlfriend, Natalie Dormer, kick the can. And the Tyrells, they're pretty much wiped out now. They're pretty much done. So game over to the House Tyrell, and we'll see more of their demise in season 7. But they're pretty much done. They got no one else to rule for them except Olenna. And we see Olenna make a truce with Ilaria due to Varys later on in the episode. But yeah, Christian, I need to talk to you about Light of the Seven and this whole trial. That first 20 minutes of Game of Thrones, what did you think about it?
Right. I mean, I've told you this before. It's like if you had lost faith in Game of Thrones, the finale of season 6 would restore it. I mean, from a filmmaking perspective, it's beautiful. It's like probably the best filmmaking since the Breaking Bad guys. You know what I mean? I loved all of it. We didn't talk about this, but it's important to note that trial by combat which is usually totally fine, was made illegal. Mm-hmm. And so Cersei was going to have to stand trial. And the scene that you're talking about with Marjorie is amazing because she's like, Cersei's not here because she's confident that she won't have to answer to the ramifications of not being here.
So many things are playing together, right? Like, well, Tommen is stuck. Cersei's kind of doing her thing. Lancel's trying to put out the fire, but not before we see, Qyburn say, hey, this isn't on me, Maester Pycelle. No offense, and I'm sorry you got to go out this way, but you got to die, know? And we see Varys' little spider children, right? Well, now they belong to Qyburn, pretty much gruesomely just kill Maester Pycelle. And as much as of a asshole he's been on this show, to see him go out, it's like, why do they always have to rob me of the victories I want to see from the people I want to see die in this show, right? I'm just like, Of course you make me feel sympathetic about some fuck I just didn't care about, right? So when he goes out at the same time, Lancel, again, there's that point where like you just see his eyes and you see just a wildfire like play out, and you're like, oh my God, dude. And Cersei, again, the explosion and the wind that comes out through King's Landing, and Cersei just has this like slow-mo moment of her smiling, and she's like, she won. She fucking won.
Again, this is what I'm talking about, where it's like, I don't know if it's troubling that I admire that so much, man. Yeah. Because again, like we're talking about the ladies in Dorne, right? Which now we know Olenna Tyrell's made a deal with them. Varys has brokered that shit. Mm-hmm. But it's about like a woman. Again, there's no line of secession, right? Tommen's still king at this point, except as I'm sure you're going to talk about in a minute, Tommen fucking kills himself. He doesn't want to be in a world without Marjorie, or maybe he doesn't want to be in a world where he knows his mom is capable of something that fucking horrific. But in any case, she crowns herself the fucking king, not Jaime, not someone else, right? She becomes the queen, the fucking hand, the Iron Fist rather, of the kingdom. And I think that's like so fucking amazing. Like I know she's a villain, but at the same time, I'm like, good for you.
There's that point where I'm like, oh yeah, this heinous woman, the shame woman. And then Cersei gives all her confessions. And she even says during the confession, she's like, even under the right circumstances, wow, this feels amazing. He's like, are you good? No. You're not dying today. You're going to die, well, for many days. Zombie Mountain, come over. Yeah, you're going to get really acquainted with this guy. So, and again, I'm like, I'm smiling that the villain is getting what she wants out of all of this. Right. I thought that was great. But we didn't talk about this. The importance now, her last innocence, now that Tommen is gone, now makes her, if she was someone to look out for, now at least how this season ended, it's like Cersei lost all her innocence and all of her goodwill and kind-hearted with it.
Right.
And then, of course, now that we see Cersei becoming the queen and ruling all of Westeros, we end up finding out the backstory, and the biggest reveal, or one of the biggest reveals of all of Game of Thrones so far, is that Jon Snow, not so much a bastard, and not actually the son of Ned Stark, but the son of Lyanna, right? So, and we end up finding out there wasn't so much rape happening with Rhaegar and Lyanna, but they had a good loving relationship, or I think we see that in season 7. But you guys know what I'm talking about here, right? The whole Tower of Joy scene is played out, and Lyanna tells Ned, promise me, Ned, promise me. And I think there's some other stuff saying like, hey, you know, Robert would probably execute this kid, right? So now knowing this whole time that Jon, not so much a bastard, and as a matter of fact, if we're playing this line of succession, it wasn't Stannis that had to rule after Robert died. It should have been Jon Snow the entire time. So that was a great reveal. And again, from someone who died at the end of season 5 to now be hailed the King of the North, I thought was really amazing. I thought it was really cool. And of course, you know, it didn't go so well for Robb Stark when he was announced King of the North, but to see all the North Bannermen kind of have, again, a nice contrast to Jon Snow declaring themselves King of the North with the sword and all that, I thought was really great. And then, of course, Christian, let me get the orchestra here. 1, 2, 3. Na na na. Na na na. Okay, another season. Ending with fucking Daenerys. Okay.
Yeah, no, but this time it matters. This time it matters because she's got the fucking dragon. She got some allies, motherfucking. She got the ships. Like, this finally, I know we've been fucking burned on this the previous times, but finally it matters, man. And like, the world is collapsing on itself.
Okay, so let's get this figured out before I say right now, so I can give you some fire and some arguments ready for all of you to fight me in the comment section on why season 7 is absolutely the worst season of Game of Thrones. I want people to know this season ended with Daenerys having all of the Greyjoy fleet, or at least the strongest fleet up to this point, on top of the fleets that she got from Slaver's Bay, right, from those people. She has all of the support from Dorne, all of the Unsullied, because the Second Sons have to kind of rule Meereen, 3 dragons, and the Tyrell support. I just want people to know Dany is pretty much fucking untouchable. So just remember that when we go into the season 7 review of how she loses it in the most, I don't know, I like, you know, coining the term South Park way, where it's just so ridiculous and fucking obtuse to me that it doesn't make sense in this narrative and this great story of how Game of Thrones is a great show that we know it to be.
Season 6 was good, and we're like, okay, they've righted the ship, and then season 7's a really big fucking dip, man.
But guys, let us know what you think. What were some of your favorite moments of season 6, and was season 6 your favorite? Please let us know down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe as always, and stay toasty.